So, in our final section or segment of Module One, we're going to be looking at two things. First is the approaches to language teaching, and then we have presentation techniques. And in the midst of it, we also have going to talk about assessment types slightly, briefly. Okay. So, what are the views of language teaching and learning? There are different types of views, and it depends on your view or your mindset, you know. And whatever you choose to do is dependent on your views about language teaching. Some people believe that language is made up of structures, for communicating meaning. So they would focus on grammar, using structure, to teach English. While some people feel, well, it's what we use the language for that is important, and such people will use task-based learning most of the time. They want the language to be real and relevant, so they bring into the classroom activities that are relevant that students will use in everyday life. Okay, so we have the view of language, the view of language learning. Your view of language learning is your perception on how students learn. Some people believe that language is best learned when you are using controlled practice, you are systematic, and that you should avoid mistakes. While others say, hey, let the students use the language. The more they use the language, the more they're going to learn the language. So I'm not going to interrupt the process by focusing on their mistakes all the time. I will only correct them discreetly and as at when due. Now, we also have our perspectives about classroom practice. Some people feel that oral skills are learned before written skills. Others believe otherwise. Okay, some believe that language structures should be practiced in controlled conditions. So, if you're that kind of teacher, you restrict your learners. The learners cannot use language freely in your classroom. You're always giving them activities where you put conditions and boundaries around them. While some people believe that in a classroom, we should solve problems, we should talk, we should do lots of relevant activities, we should use tasks, to determine what aspect of language is to be taught. So you can see that there's a structural approach and there is the task based approach. So, where are you? Most English teachers around the world, second language English teachers like to use the structural approach. But I think the learners will prefer a task based learning approach. So keep that in mind. Make learning relevant to the day to day lives of your students. Use tasks instead of writing essays that are not relevant. Do they need to learn how to write letters or write articles for their local newspaper or write a set of instructions depending on the year level? Maybe write how to cook maybe noodles or make a cup of tea. Do they have to create menus? In your activities for comprehension, you don't have to bring only a text that is in paragraphs. You can bring a poster and ask them questions from it. You can even bring word problems. By the way, in mathematics, we have word problems because that is comprehension. The students have to understand the language before they can carry out the maths activity. We can bring English into geography, social studies, science, etc., etc. So we need to make language learning relevant, not only for the everyday lives of our learners, but for the teaching of the different subjects that we meet in school. So, one of the things we do in language learning is we use introductory activities, or you can say starter activities. You want to warm up, the classroom. For example, if learners come in tired, to your lesson, or otherwise it's the beginning of the session, you want to do activities that would, cause your learners to interact more closely with each other, bring them closer in terms of, being team members of the same classroom and things like that. You want to create interest, or you want to introduce them deliberately, strategically to the topic for the day. So we can use lead ins. Lead ins is when a teacher is deliberately leading the students to the topic that they want for the day. You can use that using a picture. You can put up a picture and then you can start asking your learners, what do you see? And the learners will start saying, it looks like it's a seaside. What do we do in seasides? We can swim, we can go on holiday. They start talking. Probably you're preparing them to learn the language of tourism or maybe travel. Okay, so you can use a picture, you can start a discussion, you can tell a story, so you can do different activities to lead your learners into the topic that you want to teach in that day. Okay, you can also use warmers. Now, warmers, like the word says, it's to warm up your learners or warm up the classroom. You want to build up the classroom dynamics, make everybody lively, and interested. So you start a short activity to increase excitement or anticipation in the class. It could be a game, students could talk, stand, throw balls around the class, do all manner of things in the class. And in 5 minutes, they're warmed up for the lesson and their interest has been built up. So in language teaching, as in all other subjects, we need to have starter activities. Then we have icebreakers, using introductory activities to make learners interact with one another. So we're breaking the ice. We want them to interact, be more disposed to working together during the lesson. We do a lot of icebreakers or maybe mingling activities, which I'll talk about at the beginning of a session. Because the more we break the ice, the more learners can collaborate, work as a team, and the more the quality of learning increases in the classroom. Because it's the learner's response to the teaching that makes it great. Then we have mingling activities. While icebreakers is made up of activities where maybe a learner will talk to another learner, you can say to the learner, for example, talk to your colleague and ask them where they went on holiday last year, and identify the place and the date. So everybody just talks to each other, to the person besides them. Then the teacher says, okay, so last holiday, let's see, John, who did you talk with? And John will say, I talked with Tim. What did he say? Oh, he went on holiday to Bauchi and it was June so and so. How about you, Tim? What did you learn from John? He says, oh, John went on holiday at so and so. So you see, they're using the language, but you're breaking the ice. But mingling activities is when you're having all the learners mingle. They get up and they go around. Like, for example, I like to use this particular one when I'm training. If I'm doing a face-to-face training, I'll say, find somebody who went to bed the same time as you last night. To achieve that, you have to mingle. You have to ask everybody. So everybody's running around the classroom. What time did you go to bed? 9. No, I went to bed at 10. And everybody's asking. And then when we start, when we say, okay, everybody, get back to your seats. Now, who went to bed at 8 p.m.? Who knows somebody who went to bed at 8 p.m.? And then somebody starts talking. Oh, this one did. Interesting. That was quite early. Okay, so 9 p.m. Did you find anybody at 9 p.m.? Who slept at 9 p.m. and who was the person who went to bed at that time? They start talking. Who went to bed at 10? How about 11 p.m.? Until you find out the last person who went to bed at night. It's just a mingling activity. You made your learners to mingle, to talk to everybody. Another way you can do it is you can cut out small pieces of card. And if you want to teach a subject, you can make it relevant in this activity. So you could use maybe collocations, words that go together in English, or you could use any other thing. So we cut a piece of paper as we want them to mingle, you mix it up, and then everybody goes around looking for the other part of the compound word. Okay, so class, what do you have? Classboard. Classboard. Is there a classboard? Nope. What do you have there? Classroom. Oh, you're my partner. Good. What do you have there? Box room. Box. Okay, box. What do you have? Car. Box car. No, it doesn't make any sense. We even give tea and breast, rice and chicken, chicken and chips, fish and chips, just for the fun of it, to mingle so that we're ready and we have the kind of excitement that we need for the lesson. 5 minutes is enough to mingle in a classroom. So this is a technique for English language teaching, making the students talk and making them warm up to each other, or lead-ins, leading them to the topic. So warmers or icebreakers or mingling activities can be games, they could be activities, they could be anything. They're done in like 5 minutes, unless you have a 1 hour lesson and you think it's relevant and you want to use 10 minutes for the introductory activity. So we're also looking at approaches or methods in English language teaching today. We've talked about the introductory activities, but what about the techniques for teaching English? And there are here about 10 different techniques that you could learn. We have PPP, presentation, practice, and production. The lexical approach, the functional approach, communicative approaches, grammar translation method, that's an old-fashioned one, total physical response, test, teach, test, guided discovery, content-based learning, and content and language integrated learning. So we're going to look at all of them now.